Hello and welcome. Here we're going to be looking at the new option inside MigrationWiz, the Active Directory migration project. I'm going to do a deeper dive on this one now and actually show you obviously the standard setup with creating project and bringing objects across, but go into a bit more detail on some of the transformation options, the matching criteria, what happens when we move people around, a bit more detail on really how we would be achieving these migrations. Now, the whole idea with this AD migration tool is really to bring across those identities, those users and group objects from one source AD into a target AD without having them physically connected together. So there's no need for any trusts or anything in place there. They're all driven from the SaaS console inside MigrationWiz. And the point is to make it very easy. So when you are doing a migration and you want to bring those identities across, those identities would be syncing up, say, to Azure AD, from those different sources, we can then utilize those core objects in this migration process. So that's really the basis for what we wanted to achieve with this MigrationWiz project. But let's jump in now and create a project and show you how that all hangs together and works. So first thing you'll notice is there is now an option here on the lower end of the screen, the Active Directory migration project, that you can choose as a new item. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to give it a name and a customer for this. Put that in and hit next. And how it works on the source and destination is we have a source and target agent that we download onto a machine. Now that would be on a machine that can at least see a domain controller. It can be the domain controller itself if you need to, or another machine that has access in the network to view those objects as well. But the important part here is having this API key. So I'm going to copy this to the clipboard now. And what we do is we'll download the source agent onto the DC and do it on the target as well. Now we do that by hitting next step, and you can see the API is the same. There's our download for the target agent, but we do need to select what region we want the data to be stored in. This is obviously the MigrationWiz backend. Are we on the east or the west coast? I'll say west for this one, and just come down a little bit more and say save and go to summary. And it really is that easy once we say save project, that our project is now configured and ready to go in terms of the console. We now need to obviously put those agents on the source and the target, and then we can start to scan the source for the Active Directory objects we want to include as part of this project. So looking at our source domain controller, I'm just going to have a look at the users and computers. You can see I've already provisioned an OU structure we want to use for this, which is this MigFrog with Jan 2024. You can see I've got various users set up. I've got a couple of security groups as well. And obviously there's data inside these. If we look at one of the users, you can see there's data in there. There's an address, account, organization details. Good information that we want to use for this migration test. Now I have already downloaded the agent onto this machine, so we'll just run through this setup here. We say accept there. And now this logon, this first logon, is your MigrationWiz logon. So that's what would normally get you into the console. We need to use that to authenticate onto the MigrationWiz side from the agent itself. So once we've put that in, we get to ask the API key. Now this is the API key I was mentioning earlier when we first created the project. So you'd copy and paste that in there, and also the project name. It does need that. So we hit next there. That will then, as you can see, validated the API key. Now, next part is the domain admin account that we're going to be using to pick up the information. Similar account structure we'd use on the target as well. So we do need those on both sides. But you can see here that we just put in the NetBIOS name, obviously the standard layout for these sort of accounts, password, and the domain. Now this domain here is where you want, or what part of the domain you want it to be scanning from. You may not want it to scan from right from the top of the tree. You want to go a little bit deeper. Now this is based on, as you can see, the distinguished name. Now if you want to know how to get that, if you go back into your DC and you want to say, I want to scan from this point here, as long as you've got the advanced options turned on, which is here, if you right click there and hit properties, have a look at the attribute editor, and you'll find there's a DN, as we call it, the distinguished name, and you could then grab that and cut and paste that into that screen. I'm just going to leave it at the top for this demo, but that's obviously how you would go about achieving that. So let's just put that one away there. Hit next. Now what it will do is it will scan the AD itself at that level we said and pick up all of the organization units that it can see. So you can see here, and it will then ask us which ones we want to bring over. So I'm going to say Jan 2024. That is the block that we were talking about earlier. and I would then say start scan and transmit. That will go and look up those objects inside AD, and you can see it happens very quickly. It's found 31 objects, and it's already sent those to the MigrationWiz console. And that's how we do the scans to pick up that information from inside the local AD and get it up into MigrationWiz. Now we can leave this configured. It will remember all of those settings, so we can run that agent again if we want to do updates inside the source environment. We can then obviously scan those and retransmit them up to MigrationWiz. But it doesn't happen on a cycle. It is a process that you do just grab that information and store it into the console that we can then push down to the target as needed. So looking back at the console, if I hit refresh now, I will see there is a listing of all the accounts that we have set up. So you can see it's laid out. You can see the normal display name and the UPN. I do want to just touch firstly onto the transformation options, these ones here, because we get the option on the target AD about how we want to write that data inside. Do we want to use the source object UPN, or do we want to use something a little bit different? So you could then transpose that, as you can see, as appropriately. So in this particular demonstration, I'm going to leave it as the source UPN, but you can see you've got quite a lot of options you can have in there for that. The next thing to talk about is going to be matching. Because matching is very important in terms of advanced options here. And you'll find it under the source and destination, and in here, matching criteria. Now, what this is looking at is saying, well, what does it do if it finds something that is the same already? Let's suppose you've got an account which is identical in terms of what you're matching it on in the target. What does it do? Or if it can't find the direct match with this, what would it do in terms of writing that particular object? Because obviously there's boundaries around duplication, and is it the same person or is it not the same person? So what we like to do is make sure that we are looking at these objects correctly. I always recommend things like employee ID or custom fields to do the matching if you're going to be matching them across. We can use UPN prefix, we can use SAM account name, but what will happen is if I choose something like employee ID and we have, let's say, one account, John Smith, and it's John Smith at MigrationFrog and John Smith at Planium.com. And if we had email address or SAM account name, it's going to think they're the same person. And they may well be, and that may be the case. But if we put employee ID or custom attribute and we have that identity stamped on the source and stamped on the target, we know they are the same person, and it will merge the details from the source account over the top of the target. If they are not the same and it has a different employee number, it will actually not write that object. It's not going to add any numbers to it or anything at all. It's going to present it back in the console to say, I cannot write that object because there's already somebody there, and the matching criteria is not valid for that account. The employee ID in this case was different, and therefore I'm not going to bulldoze over the top of that target account because technically it is not the right one to do. If we had things like SAM account name match or a UPN prefix match, then it would say, yes, it is the same. And of course, it goes straight over the top. So this is a very important thing to realize when you start the work, is to look at what may be there for duplicates. As I say, I do recommend this section here to make it very defined. Or if you're happy that it's not going to overwrite them, then you can use these prefixes as well as. For this migration, though, I am just going to leave it as the default SAM account name and hit OK, and then come back into our project there. Now let's talk about the target OU that it's going to drop these in. As you can see, it's created this item here, which is obviously the source which it came from. Now, if I wanted to change that and make it go to a slightly different place, then you can just go and edit that. In fact, I'm going to edit this one very slightly and just put a number 2 on there. Now, if I want to make a change and do multiple there, what you're best to do here is grab that, copy that into your clipboard, because when you do it, let's say these got these 2 items here as well. Once I do collect multiple of these, it's going to not know what they are. Obviously, they're multiple, so we need to then paste that back. It's something to be aware of there. But you can see now it's changed very slightly. So these are the new OU structure that's going to write and create when it creates those accounts in there for the first time. Now, if we go to the advanced options just quickly, you'll see there is a password sync option. If you want to sync the passwords from the source to the target, you need to go and turn that on. So in this project, I will go and turn that on and then just go back up to the main project window. Let's jump into the target DC now. You can see this is running the target agent. Very, very similar setup. And we do log in with our BitTitan account, as you can see. And we have the API key and that demo AD project as well put in already. Next on that, it'll validate those. And then, of course, the domain admin account that it needs to write those accounts there, and the top level that it wants to start writing on. Now, this is a bit more defined if you're doing from a migration point of view. Where do we want that MigFrog OU to start from? It's really what we want to ask ourselves here. In this case, I'm going to say that's fine to come down at the top of the tree, but if you were wanting to put them in a particular location and then create the OU structure from that, then you could do so there. So actually what we might do here, let's just do that. Why not? Let's say we have a new OU. Let's create that, and we'll call it MigWiz inbound accounts, like so. And what we would then do, let's say we grab our properties there, attribute editor, we'll grab that distinguished name, take that, and go back here and pipe that in to there. Let's see what happens when we bring those accounts in. I'm fully expecting it to create that structure underneath this OU now. So that'd be certainly good to see. Now what it will do is it will then hit us with a heartbeat timer here, 300 seconds, so 5 minutes. It's going to be trolling the MigrationWiz console to say, do I have any work to do? Is there any objects I need to write or update or anything? And it will do that every 5 minutes, as you can see, until we go and close this agent down. So I'm going to leave this one open now, and as you can see the timer going down. Let's go back to the console and let's trigger some of these accounts to start the migration with. So as it's always good to do a bit of a test first, let's grab this one here, and so Sophia and Samson. Let's trigger those for migration. We just hit the write to target option here. What that'll do is it'll talk about licenses. That's good. And we hit start, and away it goes. You can see here, awaiting write to target. So if I go back to let's go back to our screen here, that will do it as soon as it hits this timer. I'm going to get a bit more impatient than that. I'm just going to say, click on that and get it to run immediately. And obviously what I'm expecting is it to pick up 2 accounts and write those in there, which it looks like it has done. So let's minimize that and have a look at our users and computers. You can see here we've got our MigFrog turn up. And if I go down here, you can see there's our OU structure that's been created. And having a look at Sophia, you can see here's our details, address, account which it's got, organization, and yeah, everything looks to be brought over correctly, which is certainly nice to see. Going back into our source AD, let's see what happens when we start to make changes to these accounts. Let's go into Sophia and we'll give her a description, Rockstar there. Now, to get that information to make that change on the target tenant, we do need to actually have this agent up and running again and grab these and do that start scan and transmit again. That will rescan that source environment and resubmit that data up to the SaaS agent. And if we go back to our console here, now there is nothing to do on here because this particular account, as you can see, go down the bottom, it's updated successfully. It's already had its like little run experience. That one will continue to sync across from the source environment. So if we were to go to our source system now and then into our target, what I'm looking for here is to say, okay, we want to have, oh, looks like it's hit that cycle even. That's good timing. And you see it's actually done an update for Sophia. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is to say objects will continue to update and they will continue to sync until we tell them not to, or we lock the source. And this is really what I wanted to get at here. So let's suppose I go back in here and have a look at Sophia now. There we are, Rockstar. So these syncs are happening automatically, provided that we take the data from the source and resubmit it to the console. If it's been synced previously, it will continue that sync process and carry on. And you can see that on the target here, you can see that has made that change. So how do we stop that if we want that to not occur? So coming back into the console here, we can see there's an option up the top here to say lock source. If I do that, what that'll do is it will prevent the source agent from sending any more data up there. In fact, let me just go back to the source here and show you that if I've got this set up and it's locked, and I say start scan and transmit those items, you can see straight away transmission of data is locked in the project setting. So it would not allow me to overwrite the data that we've already captured with new data from the source. And that's a good way to block that so it doesn't get updated. The other way of doing that is to actually go to those particular people as well, and we say we want to on those two, and we'll say stop, which means it will then not continue any source. So if it does receive any data through, those ones will not be pushed out to the target and they would not get updated. What I want to do next is I will unlock that source because I want to go back into the target DC here. I'm going to make a small change to her again. Just put a number 2 on the end. And we'll go into here and I will transmit those objects again. So they do get updated. Good. And now go back to our target DC. What I want to do here is I'm actually going to move her. I'm going to move her into a new structure. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take her in here and the migration frog users here straight at the top here. So let's grab that and go straight into users. Yes, we do want to move that around. Thank you. Okay. Now I'll go back to the console and we'll go down and find just her again. And we'll say we're allowed to write to target. Go ahead and do. There we are. Okay. And then back into. I know I'm flying around a lot, but this is good to show you because what I want to show you here is if I say hit now, it's going to be updating that one item for Sophia Neal. Let's see if I go down a bit, you'll be able to see that. Okay, good. And we come back in here. Now, what I'm showing you here is that once a user is synced into the target system, the backend system of the console grabs the object Guid of where it wrote those items. So it's no longer doing any matching. It's looking at the Guid that it created that account under and then recording that. So what it should be doing, if I have this correctly, I can double click on Sophia here and it should have taken those updates. And we should find firstly that it hasn't created one in here. If I do a refresh here, and look at the refresh of this one, just make sure it hasn't recreated her, which is good, it hasn't. It should have updated this one, and we should see, there we are, Rockstar 2. So really, wherever we move Sophia now in the whole structure, if that account does get synced again, it will not try and recreate in this structure. It will follow her around, and it will update accordingly into the correct place. What I'd like to do now is go a little deeper into that matching criteria that we were talking about before. So I'm going to set up a bit of a scenario here where we have a definite match based on employee ID and one that definitely isn't. I want to see how they appear in the console and what we do about those. So to set this up, I'll create a new org unit. We'll call this one match test. And I'm going to take a couple of new users that we haven't seen before here. Let's grab these ones here and we'll just put them into match test. And let's have a look at those. Now, these two should have employee IDs already. If we look at the attribute editor, we should find, yep, there's one there. And also for Lucian, we should see one as well. It's part of my dummy account setups that they do have one, which is good. Okay, now what I'd like to do is create those accounts as if they already existed on the target setup. In the target ID, you can see here, Migration Frog users, you can see I've got Darryl Wall, which does have the employee ID set correctly. You can see there's the one that matches Darryl across on the source environment. But Lucian Booth here has an employee ID that does not match, just 5 9s in there. So let's kick off the migration with that matching content set and then see what happens to these two accounts and see what happens inside here when it tries to bring those over. So what we'll do is we'll go into the console and it's sign in there again. And look at our matching criteria. Let's go to the advanced options, matching criteria, and we'll make it say employee ID, like so. Now, I do need to go back to my other DC here. I'm going to say unselect those use. And what we should do is, there you see, it's now got match test available to us. We'll say scan and transmit. There we are, 2 objects sent up, which is good. So in the console now, I should see those 2 people. So refresh here. And looking through, I'll sort it by where are we? Source. Okay, so here's Darrell Wall. Grab that one, and we should have Lucian Booth in there as well. There, good. So let's now say write to target for those ones and hit start. Okay, and they should be good to go. So after that cycle has run, you can see it has an error writing to Lucian Booth as expected, but it's updated Sophia and updated Darrell. So what we should find, firstly, let's go and have a look at the Darrell. Let's just refresh that screen, and we should find that with Darrell, this user that it did exist already should now have some other attributes in there, which looks like it does. It's got those details which have come across. So the account has merged correctly based on that employee ID matching, which is certainly good. But you can see it's left the Lucian account alone, and see there's nothing there. It's like how we created it because it doesn't have a match. So looking back in the console as we're doing a filter on the objects that can't be written, what's really happening here is that it found that the Lucian Booth did exist in terms of the CN and the UPN and other things, but because it couldn't match the employee ID, it hasn't bulldozed over the top of that record. It says this is not a match, and it will sit in this failure state, object cannot be written. So you need to go in and resolve that and say, well, what is really happening with this account? Is it a match? Is it not? And really where things need to be on both sides so you can then perform that migration correctly. It's a bit of a safeguard so that it doesn't go across accounts that don't match. We don't want it merging accounts that are wrong. And so, like I say, it's a safeguard to make sure that your migration does work successfully. Now, the last thing I want to show you, just quickly, one of the nice features here is once I finish these migrations, what I can do is I can grab any of these users. I'm just going to grab 4 as an example here, and I can push those objects across. If I say export project, I can take them into another project over here, which might be a mail migration project. It could be a OneDrive migration project. It doesn't matter. The point is that we can grab those and take those line items, as you can see there, and push them over. So if I look at TCG demo now, you can see there's the 4 that I pushed over. So it's quite easy to move those around. But anyway, that's very good. Thank you for watching. Very quick demonstration of the new AD migration project inside MigrationWiz, and we hope you can check it out soon. Thank you.